Welcome to the second video of Chapter 5. This video deals with different kind of risk which we'll find in global supply chains. When goods cross international borders, then they affect the supply chain drivers. First is transportation. The distances through which goods and raw materials move, it becomes longer, it takes more time, distances are larger. Since distances and times are larger, therefore inventories, they also tend to be higher. Also in global supply chains, because you want to serve a larger market, so your volume also tends to be high, and it may lead to economies of scale. So at one time your costs are getting higher, and at the other end costs are getting lower. The net impact will be determined by these three major supply chain drivers. Now let us look at what are the kind of risks that are there in global supply chains but not in local supply chains. These are the three kind of risk which you will not find in local supply chains but you will find in global supply chains. The foremost is currency exchange uncertainty. So if there are two companies which are in two different countries, when they make the exchange, so they give the goods and it pays in dollars. Now when it pays in dollars, you find that dollar is fluctuating against yen, against rupees, against pound and against euro. Now if same goods have been procured here, this kind of risk is not there. But once it is an international transaction, these kind of risks are inherent. And these fluctuations can actually become very large. They may fluctuate even by 5 to 7% in a month. And even if you are efficient, but because of these fluctuations in currency, because you are buying or selling, your profits may get eroded or it may also become higher. So depending upon whether you are buying or selling, depending upon whether currency is becoming weak or strong, a company's costs may become higher or it may become lower and it will affect its profits. So currency exchange is one of the major unavoidable risk which will be there in international supply chains. Second is about taxation. The taxations vary from countries to country. Some countries will impose a customs duty when a good is imported into the country. In India in 1990s, before or during that time, when liberalization happened, the import duty or customs duty, it was common to have 60%, 80%, like that kind of customs duty. Today, customs duties have become very low. That is why you find many international products are now easily available in India. So earlier, there used to be restrictions, there used to be quotas, and there used to be high excise customs duty. Similarly, sometimes a country may also put a export tax. One is an import tax which is called customs duty. Another is if you export, you may have to pay tax. Sometimes you must have heard that government imposes export tax on onions. So when onion prices go up in India, so to discourage export of onion, government puts the export tax. Now taxation, this varies from countries to countries. There are several countries to attract investment. They tend to give sops to the companies by reducing the customs duty, by giving subsidies and by eliminating any quota system which may be there. So if you have got an international supply chain which runs into several countries, so from country to country you will find that tax rates are quite different. One is for import, another is for export, and the subsidies, the quotas. This is the environment in which a company has to deal with its supply chains. Another aspect which also varies from one country to another, these are laws. So there are different kinds of laws. So one could be labor laws. So in India, women were not allowed to work outside in the factories in the late hours. So that is why there were a lot of demand by the there was a lot of demand by call centers so as to allow them. Similarly, environmental laws, they vary. They vary from one state to another. They vary from one country to another. So what is banned in one country may not be banned in another country, or the emission levels which are permitted in one country may be higher or lower in other countries. In other words, what you can produce in one country, you may not be able to produce in other countries. And environmental laws may also state that you cannot put a plant in some zones because it is closer to the environmentally sensitive zones like some of the forest or some of the water bodies. Apart from that, another factor which is important is enforcement of laws. Enforcement of laws tend to be better in developed countries as compared with the developing countries. And in some highly underdeveloped countries, you will find that enforcement is quite weak. So if you look at Afghanistan and if you look at several of the African countries, you will find enforcement. Their democracy is not there. Apart from that, enforcement of laws is also weak. So when enforcement of law is weak, so many companies, they would not wish to invest heavily in sourcing the goods or producing the goods in those countries. So these are three very unique kind of risk which are unique to global supply chains. Let us look at same thing again which I mentioned. So for all the companies, risk which are common to all, these are exchange rate fluctuation, these are local laws, environmental laws, labor laws, and taxes. And when developed companies in the developed countries are planning to source, produce, assemble in other countries, then they face some other kind of risk which may not be so much there in their own countries. So first thing that they look at is political stability. So political stability is also very important because a country may nationalize the factories. It may nationalize the companies, which means it may take over the companies from those multinationals. So that kind of thing was not very uncommon in 1970s and 80s. And recently, in one of the South American countries, same kind of thing is being seen there. So while designing a supply chain, the companies are also looking at political stability, and where they find that political stability is low, in that case, they may not invest heavily in those economies. So when companies from developed countries, they are thinking of designing their supply chains, they also look at local infrastructure. Local infrastructure in developing and underdeveloped countries, it tends to be fairly weak. Whether it is about port, or it is about availability of electricity, or it is about roads, or it is traffic on the roads, or it is other kind of infrastructure which is required to move, store, and produce the goods. And same is with the local economies. So what are some of the risks in supply chain design? This is not unique only to global supply chains, but to any supply chain. So there could be disruptions because of terrorism that we see these days, about natural disaster. Okay, recently there has been big natural disaster in Bangladesh. Okay, cyclone has disturbed the operation there, labor dispute, supplier bankruptcy, delays which may happen, which affect our supply chain design. These are capacity utilization, flexibility of supply source, quality, about information infrastructure which may break down, it may be attacked, about forecasting, and similarly on intellectual property, because copying or somebody producing identical kind of products, it may not be uncommon, and your supplier may actually take your design and start producing or giving the products to your competitor, or it may use your own design and start supplying to somebody else. So on procurement front, again there are risks which is related to exchange rate, change in prices, and industry-wide utilization of capacity. So there are another risk which is there, receivable risk. These are those risks, all these which are mentioned here, which are common to both local as well as global supply chains. Financial strength of customers, okay, number of customers, so whether customers are paying you in time, okay, and also related to that is the enforcement. So if customer is not paying you, can you enforce your rights easily? Another is about risk which will come from inventory. These are about product obsolescence, that it becomes outdated, inventory holding cost, product value, demand and supply uncertainty. All this put together, they lead to inventory risk. And it is about capacity, whether capacity is flexible. In case demand goes up or comes down, can you do something else with the capacity? Or if it is rigid, in that case, either you cannot meet the increased demand, or if demand has come down, you will not be able to use the capacity that is lying unused now. Thank you.